Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Dead Island. Oh, Dead Island. I can confidently say that I have a deep affection for the Dead Island games. However, this is not a blind love that accepts everything without question. Instead, I need to provide meaningful feedback that reflects my passion so that I can appreciate it even more with each new release. Dear Deep Silver Dambuster Studio, if you are planning to create Dead Island 3, I have a few messages regarding which aspects should be carried over from Dead Island 2 and what elements should be reintroduced back from the first Dead Island. Let's get straight to the point. Number 1. Gore. The gore in Dead Island 1 was truly phenomenal for its time, and fortunately, Dead Island 2 has also managed to create a similar image, being recognized as the game with the best gore upon its release. Therefore, there's no reason not to utilize it again. Thank you. I have no issue if they'll be reusing all the gore elements from Dead Island 2 in the third installment. I hope they won't begin from the ground up for the gore, since every internal organ is just as gruesome regardless of the graphics generation. I really don't want to wait another 10 years for the trilogy.
Deep Silver Dambuster Studios started work on it about 4 years ago. We were really lucky, we got to build it from the ground up.
I understand that the released version didn't take a decade to create, but even the 4 years of development felt excessively long to me, particularly for some reason now. However, there is one significant issue that I believe hinders this spectacular gore, which is the animation lock. Dambuster. The goal of the Flash gore system, a fully locational evisceration system for humanoids, is to minimize the repetition of wounds, right? Well, you've succeeded in achieving 0% wound repetition, but then all the heavy attacks and finisher animations are locked. Even the zombies are pulled into specific position. This makes the premise of unlimited gore ineffective. It ends up looking repetitive. But this should be fixable in Dead Island 3. What I mean is, instead of pulling the zombies into a specific position and having the exact same execution animation, how about if I aim for their head, and if they're slightly tilted to the right or left, I let them stay tilted and my weapon stays hitting a bit to the side, right? Instead of, for example, hitting one zombie in the eye, then hitting another in the eye again. That's cool at first, but it gets boring afterwards. I'm sure your team feels this too, which is why you created more variations for the baseball bat ripper, which definitely means you could fix that, right? I mean, if our character shifts their direction like this, that's great. But don't telepathically move the zombies to a certain exact point to avoid repetition and boredom. Additionally, there is another factor that contributes to boredom, which is slow motion. You see, I enjoyed slow-mo in the first game, but I'm not a fan of it in Dead Island 2. Why? Because, once again, in the sequel, the slow-mo is animation locked, whereas in the first game, it was mechanical. What I mean is, in the first game, if you could land a critical attack or successfully apply certain damage, like breaking bones or decapitating, that would trigger slow-mo. Even if you managed to apply certain damage but didn't meet the required amount of criteria for other damage, you wouldn't get slow-mo. Now, the two criteria that could trigger slow-mo in the first game made us eager to achieve slow-mo again, as slow-mo hits were rare occurrences, making it feels like a bit of an achievement when triggered. And impressively, in co-op, we could still experience this rare slow-mo effect, unlike in the sequel where there is absolutely no slow-mo at all during co-op. Number 2. Art style. The term art here refers to both the environment and the character. There's no need to strive for a serious game like in Dead Island 1 where the character sometimes appear funny and sometimes serious.
My wife, my dad, oh fuck, my own fucking brother! I had no choice!
Meanwhile,
I knew I had to get inside somewhere fast and came up on this place, but phew, it's locked up tighter than a nun's asshole.
In my opinion, Dead Island 2 has a clear identity which is bright, colorful, and features lighthearted humor. This applies to both the character and the settings. Some people might prefer a gritty theme because it feels more mature and leaves a lasting impression, while despite having cheerful backdrops, Dead Island 2 can become a bit monotonous. However, when you return to the game after a month, a year, or more, it still feels like a fresh release. This indicates that the world design of Dead Island 2 is special. In the real world, a cheerful setting seems ordinary and normal, while a gritty setting appears unique. However, in the gaming world, there are already too many games with gritty settings, and this overuse has made the gritty theme lose its uniqueness. Therefore, when Dead Island 2 was released, with a theme that is typically seen as ordinary, it actually stood out among many titles that feature gritty themes.
And it's also really important that we're based in reality, right? You know, it's for horror to work. If you're in a hyper-real environment where everything's insane and fantastical and whatever, you don't feel as if the horror is invading something that is personal to you and that you would normally regard as safe, if you see what I mean. And that's where classic horror works. You know, it's always in the bedroom where they come to get you, right?
Number 3. Lockable. Want to open a door? You need a key. Want to open a box? Use a key. Even to open a trash can, you still need a key. Bruh. What is this dambuster? Please bring back the QTE door breaking mechanic from Dead Island 1. Besides being a unique mechanic, clearly no other game has a lock door breaking system, right? I think this was one of Techland's innovation that essentially mocks games that require a key just to open a door, like Resident Evil and others. After all, we clearly have a sledgehammer and even a shotgun. It's strange that we can't break a door or destroy a container. Number 4. Navigation. It's great that Dead Island 2 chose a compass just like Dead Island 1 which had a round compass. However, I would prefer if the compass were used as an actual map. Look at Neighborhood Watch, for instance. It's better and easier to understand, especially since the motto of Dead Island is to have fun and not think too much. It shouldn't lead to confusion about the map. Moreover, navigating the keys we find is crucial. At the very least, if we manage to find a key, there should be an option to track where the lock is located and also mark which keys we have already used. In my opinion, the navigation of the map and the collectibles in Dead Island 2 is already quite good in terms of complexity, like the organization of documents related to missions, etc. But it needs a little touch-up, as I mentioned earlier, to make it even better. Number 5. Vehicles. One of the biggest missed opportunities in Dead Island 2 is having great car models that only serve as loot boxes. Bruh. What is this dambuster? Let players drive the cars. If the excuse is that there are no long roads, then who cares? As long as we can drive around with friends in co-op mode to have fun crashing into zombies. Besides, Dead Island 1 also had several maps that were completely unusable for driving, but it still had them. How can it fall short compared to a game from 2011? Then there's the important issue of mobility. Why can our character, who has superpowers from out of age, die just from falling from the second floor? Bruh. Zombies don't take significant damage when falling from the same height. I understand you want to be different from Dying Light, where you can jump from skyscrapers and survive, but it shouldn't be the complete opposite. In fact, I think you should just copy that. Not every movement has to be parkour, but at the very least, if you fall from the second floor, you should only lose a little health points. And if you fall from a greater height, we could roll like in Dying Light, which will be great. Just copying the rolling and jumping over fences is simple but essential for basic parkour movement. Number 6. Minigame. In addition to cars, other great models that are overlooked are minigames like arcade and other sports such as tennis, bowling, dartboard, etc. You created all of this with detail, but it feels lifeless because we cannot interact with them. For instance, this tennis ball turret should be animated, and it would make more sense to have bowling. Why can't we use a bowling ball like Organ Ball in Sola and score points? Simple things like this could add value to the fun factor or even increase replayability. Furthermore, I really hope that any scattered objects can be picked up and used as weapons, like pens or tennis rackets, glasses, anything that could bring a smile to players when they can grab and swing it at a zombie's face. Number 7. Stamina. The stamina system in Dead Island 2 is excellent. Chef Kissed. It allows us to run indefinitely, and even while carrying something, we can still run. No other game has made mobility this easy and fast. The basic attack that doesn't require stamina is a decision I wholeheartedly applaud. Only special skills and heavy attacks require stamina, but I suggest clarifying the tutorial on heavy attacks because I've seen gameplay where many players finish the game without ever using heavy attacks due to not paying attention to hints, and it's not common for games to have a system like this. This means the system is good, but the usage needs to be clarified, or at least make it easier to understand, such as instead of using the word heavy attacks, use charge attack. Because normally when people hear heavy, they usually refers them to blunt weapons instead of charge attack. Number 8. Throwing weapon. Regarding throwing weapons, the curveball with cooldown in Dead Island 2 is great and could be used in Dead Island 3. However, the manual throwing of weapons is not very enjoyable. Why not implement auto-aim like in Dead Island 1? Even Dying Light uses auto-aim for throwing weapons. Why do I prefer the auto-aim version from the first game? Because, besides my poor aiming, auto-aim feels more satisfying. Number 9. Special skills. I appreciate the initiative of allowing freedom in choosing skills. However, the issue is similar to Gore trying to provide freedom. The skill deck has other lockable elements that hinder this freedom. For instance, slots. Why do we still have a level system if we don't gain skill points with each level up? I understand that levels are for skill slots, but if that's the case, what's the difference from a skill tree that allows us to spend points to directly acquire skills? With a skill deck that requires skill slots, we aren't free. Instead, we have to work twice as hard to use a skill. First, we must unlock the skill slots, and second, we need to find the skill card. It becomes cumbersome. Where is the freedom in that? My suggestion is to make the skill deck without the need to unlock skill slots, and the numbers shouldn't just be 5 or 6 for each deck tier. Let us use at least half of the total skills available. Or to simplify, we could revert to the skill tree system, but with skill points that can be spent and unspent. Now that would truly be freedom. Now regarding skills as well, why are drop kick and jump kick separate? The same goes for dodge and block. In the first game, we could perform all 4 moves. For instance, to execute a jump kick, we could press jump and then kick. Simple. While for a drop kick, we could run first, then jump and add a kick. Straightforward, right? The difference is that the first game didn't have a dropkick animation using both legs. As for dodging, we could just use WASD plus jump. If we wanted to block, we could also combo quick right and then left click mouse buttons. which it still requires skill here, but regardless we could do both. Next, talking about skills, I want to discuss zombie skills, especially Crusher. I love their design, how they look, and I also enjoy their ground pound. However, I really miss Crusher's knockback punch from the first game, Thug. Besides being more challenging, I feel that the hard punch is more immersive. Why? Because when dodging its punch, I genuinely swing my head in real life while trying to avoid its hit. Number 10. Legendary. I strongly disagree with the idea that legendary items should only be obtainable after completing the game. It would be better to limit it to levels instead. Relying on post-game conditions means that the completed game must have engaging content to accompany it. However, in Dead Island 2, I find the decision to require legendary weapons to be obtained only after finishing the game to be misguided for that very reason. As a result, once all legendary items are acquired, there are no further activities aside from aimlessly beating zombies. This increases and accelerates the likelihood of boredom. Not good. Additionally, why are there only 8 legendary items in the base game? Dead Island 2 is expansive, with maps extending up to 10. Is it really impossible to find at least 20 legendary items in just one base game? Then another issue arises with the storage locker. Upon release, it only holds 16 items, and that's shared among 6 slayers. Are we to expect that damn bastard thinks we can only store 3 backup weapons for each slayer? I know they increased the maximum items count to around 64 with some updates, but it still feels insufficient if we have 6 active slayers, right? Not to mention, named weapon cannot be scrapped or sold. So what's the point of having these piled up weapons? If the weapons were strong, it would matter, but the average named weapon is weak, making them useless and quite frustrating. Additionally, I appreciate the concept of unclaimed property where when you don't retrieve weapons you throw or obtain, it ended up there. However, I've noticed many players often forget about that tab during their playthroughs. Perhaps it would be beneficial to provide a hint like a pop-up notification whenever a weapon is stored or teleported there. Number 11. Fury. Rust. I completely agree and appreciate many of the Fury mechanics in Dead Island 2. It can be made unlimited, usable when it's half full like in the first game, and best of all, it can be deactivated before the matter runs out. Then, it can be refilled with an energy drink. And let's not forget, there's a Fury charger from House that I hope will be used again in the base game of Dead Island 3. However, there is one aspect that I hope will not be coming back. The Lockable feature. Why can we only use Fury in the late game? Dead Island 1 had no issues with this. We could activate it even from level 2. Is the reason lore related? Well, Dead Island 1 did not have any lore regarding Fury before it was explained by Dr. Kessler in Dead Island Retired, which is even a different game to begin with.
Kessler, you there? Something happened. I need your help.
What happened? Are you alright? I warned you about going through those tunnels.
Shut up and listen. A guy, Wayne, was exposed to the chemicals and he changed, mutated. It was horrible. Is that going to happen to me?
I honestly don't know. What was your exposure level? What about fumes? Did you wear a mask? How much of it did you breathe in?
You didn't say anything about a damn mask!
So why does lore hinder players' enjoyment? Do you understand the significance of Fury? Even Dying Light is imitating the Fury from the Island 2 with the Beast. Have you noticed the ground pound feature? Have you seen how you can toggle the mode on and off anytime? The zombie mode is an excellent aspect that you shouldn't restrict in your game. Number 12. Elemental damage. I truly appreciate all the new zombie variants and elemental types, especially the ice element from Neighborhood Watch. The only downside is that once they turn to ice, zombies should be able to shatter like glass. However, there is a more significant issue regarding zombies that are completely immune to certain elements. For instance, firefighters are immune to fire, and hazmat zombies are immune to caustic. In my opinion, base weapons should still be able to inflict some damage, even if it's only half, so to speak. Riot gear, in particular, is a zombie variant that is entirely immune to any damage, even fury. The Zompedia states that we can remove their armor with a kick or another knockback move, but in practice this is quite difficult, especially when facing them in large numbers. Moreover, the kick is very weak compared to the kick from Dead Island 1. I hope the kick strength from the first game will be brought back in Dead Island 3. Additionally, this complete immunity makes me somewhat reluctant to add any elemental modification to my favorite weapon, as it would render it ineffective. This is a poor design choice because modifying weapons is a crucial aspect of this game, offering some of the best weapons visual ever created in zombie games. It would be a shame if a player chose not to utilize any of these features solely for that reason. Number 13. New Game Plus. This is the most frustrating aspect of Dead Island 2. Why can't this sequel implement a simple New Game Plus like the first Dead Island? There is no need to place a late game zombies right in front of your face like that. But the core idea should basically allow players to use the same weapons, skills, and levels from their last game completion. The first Dead Island had no issues with this. We could play not just 2 go-around main missions, but infinitely. We could even reach level 75. Meanwhile, Dead Island 2 doesn't even reach level 50. What is going on, Dambuster? The first game maxed out at level 75. The sequel should at least go up to level 150, make it twice as much. Not to mention, why can modification items only be stored with a maximum of 99? In the first game, you could store thousands of items like water and brain champagne. If you know, you know. And an honorable mention, medkits. The first game allowed a maximum of 30 medkits per inventory slot, but in Dead Island 2, it's only 5. Bruh. What is going on, Dambuster? And amusingly, if it can only hold 5, why did you set a 2-digit number there? This isn't Bioshock. Number 14. Semi-open world. I have no issues with a segmented map. It's better this way than having a lot of repetition or bugs that cause frustrating crashes like in the Sola ending. I admit that the Sola map is indeed fast and not copy-pasted. Minor bugs or glitches are fine and can even add some humor. But if performance is sacrificed to the point of causing crashes, it's better to avoid that. To resolve that crash, you need to set the graphics quality to the lowest preset and disable the frame generator. Therefore, I conclude that the engine's performance is the cause of the crash, as I have seen gameplay from someone with high-end PC specs still experiencing that crash. Number 15. Easter eggs. Perhaps Dead Island 2 has numerous items or environments that reference real-world events or characters, but come on. I need more memorable Easter eggs that are primarily usable. Essentially, I want them to be more interactive, serving us full secret missions, unique weapons, skill cards, and even funny NPCs, you name it. If possible, include plenty of conspiracies like aliens, etc. to enhance replayability. Number 16. Price. When products have specific price points, consumers often compare them to other best similar items to ensure they are getting the best value for their money. For example, Red Dead Redemption 2 is considered one of the best games priced at $70. To justify the expenditure, your product must match that level of quality and quantity. Otherwise, you risk refunds, complaints, or at worst, negative reviews that can harm your overall sales and customer satisfaction. A significant misstep for Dead Island 2 was setting its price at $70, especially when many were using RDR2 as a benchmark for what a $70 game should deliver in terms of quality and quantity. While Dead Island 2 does offer good quality, it lacks in good quantity. I believe that if Dead Island 2 had been priced more reasonably, as it often claims focusing on quality over quantity, which means only half compared to quality and quantity, right? So if the price was just around $30 to $40, more people would buy and less people would complain, ultimately boosting sales. It likely would have received more positive reviews as well, preventing it from ending up on Epic's free game list to generate some revenue. Currently, it is available at a 70% discount, so if it had launched at a lower price, it probably wouldn't have needed such a drastic price cut. Those are what I wanted to convey regarding aspects that should and shouldn't be included in the Dead Island franchise moving forward for the enjoyment of players and satisfying gameplay. What are your thoughts on all of this? Do you agree? Or do you have other suggestions? Please share in the comment section. If we receive enough new suggestions, we could create a part 2 for what is needed in Dead Island 3. I am Fury Rust, thanks for watching, and I'll see you down the line.